I think I share this every time, but I've been amazed at what Revelation reveals to us about God. So I hope and pray that you will, and I will, know God better as we do this. It's an unexpected almost blessing to me, like to be able to see God more clearly. And so as we study, as we go through this, then for every time you study the Bible, but as we are here in Revelation, is always desire to know God better when you're in His Word. And you'll get the most out of your Bible study, and particularly, I think, get the most out of Revelation. This is so connected to the whole Bible as the Bible wraps things up. And we've already have gone through with John. We've already experienced seeing Jesus in His glory, and we've seen the way John communicates the information to us, and it's just very real and personal. And even the way that John introduces Jesus, and so matter of factly talks about angelic beings and reveals how Jesus spoke about the churches, and that's us, you realize. When Jesus is talking to the churches, the 7 churches, He's talking to us. And it's personal and it's challenging, and it reveals to us what's important to Him. So we need to continually go back to that, and what's important to Him should be important to us. And so we've gone with John, we've listened to what Jesus had to say to us, to the churches, and then we've gone with John. It's almost as if we have experienced the rapture ahead of time. We've gone with John into the throne room of God, and we've seen unheard of sights. We've seen somehow, and I think we see it in our spirit as much as we do in our intellect, that we've seen God on His throne. We've seen myriads of angels and purified saints, almost seen ourselves in heaven. And we've also seen, hopefully experienced, the most real worship that is recorded in the Bible. Right here that we just went through in chapter 4 and 5 is the most realistic worship, more than the Psalms, more than any place else, because it is actually John in the presence of God and telling us what he sees. So it's almost as if we, ahead of time, experience that. So you've got to see and grasp how this opens our understanding of God, our knowing of Him, and there's nothing better. There's nothing better than that. But we must not disconnect these events that we're looking at in the throne room and coming up, the events that are about to follow, to the story of all of Scripture. All of this stuff, if you were to just study chapter 6 without knowing the Old Testament, without knowing the Gospels, you may think God is cruel. He's mean to people. But when you see how what is going on, the judgment fits in with the whole story, then you see that it's not like that. And remember, this Jesus that we're looking at here is the same Jesus that we saw in the Gospels. Same Jesus that walked this earth. And we looked at how God often communicates in stories. And of course, this resonates with us as we are in His image. So I'm trying to orient us to get ready. It's a challenging thing to study the tribulation period. And so today is to orient us to that and to remember who God is and to remember how He communicates. So this whole thing is set up. It's set up like a story. It's real history and it's real prophecy, real events. But God is telling us this story that he wants to resonate with our spirit. And he wants us to know and understand him and to see what our place is in this story. I think you'll see today you have a place in this story that's being laid out for us. Because just like the coming of the Messiah was prophesied, and we experienced that in the Gospels, real life historical events that took place with real people, and how we experience Jesus even now. And the same type of thing is going to happen in the future. What we talk about today it's looking at real events are going to take place to real people who will experience them, and even possibly people we know and love. So we've crossed the line of stuff that we will experience. Okay, so the rapture is taking place. Now our perspective is in heaven looking at earth. And so, but what is going to happen is really going to happen. Okay, it's real events. Just like all the other stuff in the Bible is prophesied. It really happened. It really affected us, and it really affected real people. And that's going to continue to happen. And so when we look at these things, it's not just some apocalyptic movie that we're looking at. It's people that you know and love that will go through. They'll go through these things. And I've told you that I lose track of the stories that I tell you, but I'm sure I've told you this story before. Is that when I was fighting fires with the Forest Service, I was on a fire crew fighting fires for the Forest Service, and I was on one fire, and I was zeroed in, I was focused. So we're clearing fire line. If we get there in time before the fire gets there, we can roll out dynamite rolls, and we'll actually do our first fire line with like a 100-foot rope of dynamite, and we'll detonate it, and it'll do the first clear. And then we go in, and it's like there's still some logs that didn't get blown away. We're out there with Pulaskis and cutting logs, falling trees. It's intense because the fire's coming, and we're preparing, so we're getting after it. It's intense work. And so I'm there, I've got my head down, and I'm going. And I feel a hand on my back, and I turn around, and there's kind of the big fire boss has come in, and he pulled me aside. He says, "Steve, you can't do that." I said, "What?" "I'm clearing fire line. We're doing what we're supposed to be." He says, "No, you got to work, but you got to keep your head up. You're responsible for all these people around you. Look at these guys. You got to watch the ridge. Is the fire coming down the ridge? You got to watch these guys. You got to have a plan while you're working. You can't focus like that. You got to pay attention. You got to pay attention to what's going on around you." And so in this scenario, I was the crew boss on the fire. So you're sitting here, we're studying Revelation. You're learning the story. God's telling the story. The people around you aren't hearing the story. God's telling you. And you have to understand Revelation. You have what you need. You studied the Old Testament. You've seen how the gospel is built on the Old Testament. You've studied what Paul has taught us about how to live and how it wraps everything up. You understand how God does things. You understand the end of the story. You understand the beginning of the story. You guys have the story, and we're completing the story now. And so you don't get to just enjoy the story and put your head down and live. You don't get to do that. You don't get to just have your career, your family, your life, your happiness. That's not how God works. So you see what we're learning, like what God is like. We're learning how God does things. We're learning the story that God is telling us that we can understand. It resonates with us. Okay, you may not understand every single theological detail, but we have gone through this stuff. That you have a background, you understand. When we talked about the gospel on Wednesday, if you were here, some people were hearing it for the first time. They connected some dots, but you sat here and you're connecting all the dots. You know it, you understand it. Throughout the Bible, the way God works, he gives his message to a few people. Whether that's Adam, think about it, they have this responsibility. Noah, Abraham, the Jewish people in general, or the inner circle of Jesus, the 12, or the church in general. And he always expects, when you get the story, he always expects you to handle it and live like the fireboss was telling me. So this is me putting my hand on your back and saying, hey, listen up. You have the story. You need to be watching the ridge. You need to watch the people around you, and you need to be telling people what's going on, because it's just how God works. If you have the story, the greatest story ever told, it's how God may have put it in little tiny pieces, but I think for everybody here, he's put the whole thing in a package for you. You have the story, you understand it. Now, are you going to do, in a sense, what the Jewish people did? Now, God didn't give up on them, but they didn't do. God called them and called them and called them. Are you going to do what he called the church to do? He's given you the story. You can't just put your head down and live for yourself now. Do you see what I'm saying? Steve, you can't do that. That's what the boss told me. You can't do that. You can't, that guy can live like that. You can't do that. You got to keep your head up and still work, still take care of your family, still have a career, but you cannot live like that. You have the story, you have the responsibility, you have a story to tell. You've seen and heard and experienced things the world around you has no inkling of. Okay? You understand the Old Testament. You've been through the Old Testament. You see how the Old Testament is a foreshadowing, points to Jesus. You understand. Everybody in here understands substitution. All I have to do is say the word. You got the whole story in your head. You understand. You understand that Jesus is coming back for you. You understand that you're going to be going to heaven. You understand that you're going to be in the throne room. And you understand somewhat, more detail later coming, what's going to transpire on this earth. Do you realize what you have? I don't think you have an inkling as to what you have. The world has they're afraid, they're scared to death, they see this stuff happen, they're panicking, they're ignoring it, and they're just taking care of their business. You can't do that. You cannot live like that. That's what Revelation is telling us. You're not allowed, as a believer, you're not allowed to live like that. You're not allowed to do what I was doing. You can't just run the chainsaw on the Pulaski and be happy just working your butt off. You can't do it. You better get your head up. The people you're around are likely, I'm not giving dates, they're likely, if they don't hear the story, they're likely to live through what we talk about today. They're likely to see the rider on the white horse. They're likely to see the rider on the black horse. They're likely to see death on the pale horse and Hades behind. You will not see that stuff, but you know about it. Why do you know about it? Is it so you can just oh man, glad I don't have to go through that. Whew, man, I can just live my life now. I'm okay. That's not why you're told the story. Get your head up. Pay attention. Not just so you can be fascinated with end times. That's ridiculous. Selfish. You have a story to tell. Like John, you've heard Jesus reveal himself through Moses and the prophets, right? Just like John, Jesus told those two disciples told the Jesus' 12. Remember, we've done this so often. And like John, you heard how Jesus revealed himself through Moses and the prophets. You heard how Paul delved into the spiritual realm of being identified with the death, resurrection of Jesus. You've heard Paul teach about walking in the spirit, not in the flesh. Now you've seen the future. You've been in the throne room. You, in a sense, have fallen down before the throne and you've seen the lamb that was slain. And now, you see how you've seen all that stuff? That's simply amazing. Now you've been in the throne room. You've seen the glories of heaven. You've seen the angelic, you've seen all that. Now you're seeing the future. You've seen the devastation and judgment of the nations and of the people of the world. We're getting an unheard of glimpse into eternity after that. Still, after we study all that, we're going to get a glimpse into eternity. You're going to know stuff that Bill Gates doesn't know. You're going to know stuff that the smartest, best scientist and the best historian, you're going to know stuff that they don't know. You have the greatest story ever told, and you have it not just in your head, you have it in your heart. You have a flavor for what it is. And now, do you really think that you have too much on your plate and that you are just to put your head down and live for your career, family, and personal happiness? I think there will be you and I have a responsibility. In fact, I kind of have news for you from on high. You have all this news available to you too. I'm not special. That you'll be held accountable for the story that you have been privileged to hear. How much of the story have you heard? You know, we're not better than anybody else, but I do think from where we have been and where God has led us, you have a better grip on the story than people that have spent their entire life in church. And a lot of you it's been just in the last few years. You have the story. You have, and you've been given, you have connected the dots. And so it truly is the greatest story ever told, and you have a place in it. So we had to pause here because we can't just study these events that are going to take place and not understand why they are given to us. They're not given to entertain us, and they're not given to scare us. They're given so we know our place, your place in the story. Y'all remember COVID just a few years ago? The world went crazy for a minute. Yeah, we're still suffering the effects of COVID. And a lot of it was imaginary. Some of it was real. You know, you could walk, I'd never experienced before in the United States, walk into a grocery store and seeing like a bare shelf. Whoa, that's new. Never seen that before. I've never seen that before. That is such a minor thing compared to what the people will see after that rider on the white horse shows up. That's when the beginning of the tribulation. We studied all that last week, so we won't go into all the details of it. But we should, before we dig into this, we're going to dig into it a little bit today. But before we dig into it, we've been prepped from chapter 5 and Revelation, go backwards all the way to Genesis 1. And we have been prepped to understand this and to grasp it and to see how it fits in. And so, what will we do with this information? Because I'm about to pile more on you, okay? You already have the story, but I'm about to pile some more information on you, even today a little bit. It's kind of though like, I always think about this. Do y'all think about this when you're on the airplane and the stewardess stands up with her little mask, and she goes, drops it and says, if the bag drops out of the ceiling above you, place the mask on yourself first and then assist those around you. I always have the spiritual analogy in my head when she does that. And I think, okay, that's the right thing. It sounds selfish, but I think it's the right thing to do it like that. So before we go into this, you need to put your mask on first so that you are in a place to help. You have the story, but are you in a place to do your part in sharing the story? Because just as sure as Israel was given the task of having the message for the whole world, just as sure as in Acts 2, the church was given, as sure as Jesus said, go into all the world and make disciples, as absolutely certain as that is, you have this task given to you, and you have this information for a reason. But first, make sure you've put your own mask on. Make sure you know God, right? Make sure you're in the right place with Him. And now, let's see who needs help. Now, you see, when that happens, it's not time to watch a movie on the little screen. It's not time to read your book. No, it's time to get busy. Or do my kids have it on? What about the little lady in front there? Is she all right? Does she need help getting her mask on? Because everybody you know, if the rapture takes place in the next week or so, everybody you know is either going to be in heaven or they're going to be going through what we talk about. And you've been told ahead of time. Not only told like you just heard it. You've been taught it with spirit-backed, prayer-backed power. You having the Holy Spirit have understood it. You've understood it. And now, we're about to pile more on. What are we going to do with it? And that needs to be your disposition as we enter into this point. We cross the line in Revelation. We're now in the tribulation period. Now, we've already talked about the man of 666. We've already talked about the man of sin. We've already introduced him. We're not going to go back and do that all over again. But we have jumped into chapter 6. John, that means you, the church, is in heaven, and the view is of the earth. Now, when the people of earth, okay, let's read a quick review of where we've been first. Did I already miss a verse? Yeah, Revelation 5, 7 to 9. This is where we've been. We're about to launch into the tribulation. Keith, are you there?
Yeah.
Would you read the Revelation 5, 7 to 9? I haven't seen you in quite a while, so I just wanted to hear.
Okay, 5, 7 through 9.
Yeah.
And he came and took the book out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne. When he had taken the book, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each one holding a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, worthy are you to take the book and to break its seals, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood. You were slain and purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe, tongue, and people and nation.
So, for as much as possible, if you've tuned in, if you have paid attention, then you've lived, then as close as possible, you've lived that. Now, here we go. Here's where we're going to go in chapter 6. What the people of earth, your friends, your family, have ahead of them, unless they believe, they have ahead of them are 3 series of 7 judgments. So just to give you a little outline of where we're going. There's 3 series of 7 judgments. The first series are the seals to be opened. The 7 seals. that document. Jesus, the only one who can open that. Jesus opening the title deed of the earth. Jesus beginning that process of taking back the earth, judging the earth, and individuals. And it starts with the seven seals. On the seventh seal it leads into the next series of judgments. Those are the trumpet judgments. 7 angels blowing the trumpets. Each time a trumpet is blown, something else happens. Everything's getting worse and worse and worse, okay? So these series of judgments take place in basically chapter 6, chapters 8 to 9, and chapter 16. The 7 seal judgments, the 7 trumpet judgments, and then the 7 bowl judgments. The last trumpet judgment introduces the 7 bowl judgments. So that's what we're going to cover up into chapter 19. So we're going to cover three series of 7 judgments apiece. And the last one of each series introduces the next. Each one gets worse than the last. The first set of seals, the seals judgments, are going to kill about a third of the population of the earth. So that should get your attention. We've never had any disease like that or any pestilence like that kills a third of the people of the earth, at least nothing I know of. So, and then some people right here are going to go, stop. Wait a minute. Is that fair? Okay. You have a privilege. You have the whole story. Think all the way back and throughout history and up to this day and even beyond into the tribulation. God calls people to himself. God desires that nobody should perish. God desires, there's some bad theology out there that come from really smart, I believe they're Christian, that tells us different. But the Bible tells us that God desires none should perish. And he calls all men unto himself. And he has sent us on a pre-tribulation mission to tell this story. So, we do have judgments going on in chapter 6. We do have horrendous stuff. God is in control. But we have thousands and thousands and thousands of years leading up to this of God's mercy, God's patience, God's kindness, God's grace, and God's story being told. And the thing about it is, we have a little bit more time. Even I'm not saying I know years or anything like that, but when you compare it to all of history, and you compare that we're in the last days, the Bible tells us, compared to all of history, there's a little bit of time left to tell God's story, and we are in that last thing while the story can be told, which is before the tribulation. We'll talk about, there are people that believe in the tribulation, we'll talk about that. Because our mission, us, once this starts in chapter 6, you're in heaven. Our mission right now is to tell the story. Now, when we are gone, God is he's still, in his judgment, he still offers mercy. That's the nature, the character, the person of God. You may have experienced this. At times when you're getting God's discipline, he's still offering out to you his hand of mercy. Still. And he offers the mercy to people we've quit offering mercy to. God still offers mercy. So we are gone. Now, then the tribulation, he sends another group of people. He sends another wave of messengers. We're gone. Another wave of messengers is sent into the world. We're told that it's going to be 144,000. Is that right? 144,000 of messengers, spirit-empowered evangelists with special qualifications. We'll talk about it later. They too are on a mission of rescue in the midst of judgment. I'm trying to remind you of what God is like, okay? And so even in our own mind, when we see, wow, a third of the population of the world is killed, man, what is God like? So I want you to remember what God is like. Offering mercy in the midst. God is holy and he is just. And because of that character of God, Judgment and all sin must be judged, and all people and nations must be judged. But we also know God is merciful, and he also offers mercy at the same time. That's what's going on, even in the tribulation, even in the midst of judgment. Jesus, the Creator, is now beginning to reclaim the earth. Remember what happens. Where we're headed here, we know the end of the story, the curse is going to be lifted. And it's going to be the earth as he intended it to be, as he created it. Right now, he's just cleaning house. That's what's happening. And judging people, and he's judging nations. And he's going to give mankind, in the midst of all this, and all of his wisdom, and all of his planning, and all of how he works it out, in the midst of all this, he's going to give mankind what mankind has always wanted since Genesis. We've always been looking for a ruler who has all the answers and yet doesn't restrain the flesh. And he's going to go say, go. And you'll see the four living creatures are given the voice and a sense of God like thunder. And they say, okay, this is what you've asked for, go. And he sends them the man they've been looking for. And that is the Antichrist. He's the first rider. And the tribulation begins with him. So with all eyes on the Lamb, he opens that seal. And thus begins the tribulation with the legendary four horsemen, or that's how the tribulation begins. I guess we'll let you roll, Caleb. So, these four horsemen, four horsemen of the apocalypse, they represent strength, terror, and doom. It's funny, how people have drawn on this. This little two verses here in Revelation chapter 6. These two verses have become famous. Have y'all heard of the four horsemen in the backfield of the Notre Dame football team? That's from the 1920s. Have y'all ever heard of it? The four horsemen. They were four backs, including the quarterback of the Notre Dame backfield, who were legendary and wreaking havoc upon defenses. And they were known as the four horsemen, taken right from Revelation 6. Have y'all ever seen The Pale Rider by Clint Eastwood? There's a line when all of a sudden Clint Eastwood is supposed to be the preacher. He shows up in town, and there's all these miners, and there's these bad guys are trying to take advantage of miners, and here comes the preacher coming into town, and there's a lady kind of in the back. She's reading the Bible, and she reads verses 7, 8 of chapter 6. She's going, a pale rider on a pale horse, and she looks up out the window, and there he is, and death riding the horse, and hell follows close behind him. It's like, whoa. And I'm not saying...
Same with Tombstone.
What?
Tombstone.
Is that Tombstone too?
Well, Tombstone, yeah, one of the cowboys, he speaks Latin in Rock Holiday. And he's like, so he's saying, he goes, what did he say? And he's like, and he talks about...
I'm thinking about a sick horse.
What? What'd you say, Keith?
Something about a sick horse.
Oh, a sick horse. So... Four horsemen. They're famous. All right, so the pale. Now, we where are we at here? I got off on those guys. Okay, so let's read verse 1 and 2 of chapter 6. We'll review the horsemen.
I watched as the lamb opened the first of the seven seals. Then I heard one of the four living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest.
So we discussed last week why we believe this is the Antichrist. This is not Jesus. Some people have thought this was Jesus because in chapter 19, Jesus rides a white horse. He has a crown. It's a different crown than this. And he doesn't carry a sword. He carries a bow. We won't delve completely back in this, but this is probably at the time of the signing of the peace treaty with Israel, with the nations around. and the tribulation begins. So you may say, legitimate question, well, what's the Antichrist doing in heaven? That's a legitimate question. This reveals the difference between allegory and representation. It's not that there's no allegory at all in Revelation, but some people interpret the whole book as an allegory. And as an allegory, it's like everything has a spiritual meaning. You got to somehow find what that spiritual meaning is. You have to apply it to life today. Well, no, that's not what this is. Amir Sarafati, I think that's how you say his name, describes this as this first writer as a representation of the Antichrist and his campaign of deception and intrigue that earns him global loyalty and devotion, even of the Jews. So this is a representation of the Antichrist and that he is headed out to conquer. He will conquer in many different ways. Now, he has military might. He has a bow, but he also has intrigue and deception and charisma and gain loyalty and miracles. And so he's going to gain power and loyalty, and he is going to conquer militarily also to try to take over the whole world. So we still interpret this in a literal fashion. This is not an allegory. And it's like when the rider that is called Death, that we just talked about on the pale horse, that's not death itself. Death is not a man on a horse, but it represents the factual and tragic times that are about to fall upon the earth, if that makes sense. So this is the Antichrist, and he does what we discussed. We discussed that last week, a little more detail. So then we move into the next horse, and that is verses 3 and 4. The rider on a fiery red horse.
When the Lamb opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." Then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make men slay each other. To him was given a large sword.
Okay, so a lot of versions, the NIV says large sword. Really, a better translation of this would be a great sword, because the sword they're speaking about here is not the large sword of a battle, like a great battle, and that the warriors would have these big swords to swing and hack off heads and such. But this is more. I can't remember how to say the Greek, but it's a short sword, like the Roman soldiers would carry like a dagger. It's not used so much in a great battle, but it's used violently to assassinate. It would be like the handgun of a police officer. It's like, this guy is fighting authority. Ooh, it's a quick, and it's up close, and it's personal, and it's hand to hand. It's violent hand to hand combat. It's not really speaking so much about a great war that is going to take place. There's going to be wars all through the tribulation period. But there's also going to be more personal violence, like division, civil unrest, lack of food. And what happens when there's lack of food? There's riots, and then there's stealing, and then there's killing, and security and peace are taken away, not just from the nations, but from neighbors. It's going to be a violent time, like it talks about the days before the flood were a violent time. This is going to be a violent time, and this part of it is because there's going to be lack. People are not going to have everything they need, and I think for the sake of Shannon back with the kids, I think we'll just we'll cut it there. And we'll pick up with the black horse with the pair of scales next week. But mainly today, our goal is that you would prepare, understand. We're not studying this separate from the rest of the Bible. That we're studying this as a part of the big story and a part of your part of the story. This is information we need to know. And it needs to motivate us in how we live today and what we do and the mission that we're on. So get your head up. God's called us to something.